Hello again. As somebody who constantly pokes around in the past and writes books which run counter to the accepted version of history in many areas, it will be rightly assumed that this is something I find fascinating. History is not a static thing at all, but rather a dynamic process. And the more that people question what has happened in the past, the more likely it will be that we end up getting an accurate view of how things really have happened. Some ideas about the past are very controversial, and at times they sound quite loopy, but that's fine. It's only by asking if it's true that the sinking of the Lusitania brought America into the First World War that we're likely to find out the true facts. Asking what was listed on the bills of lading is even more useful. That's the way that we find out about history. Examining the destruction of the World Trade Center in 2001 can tell us some important things about the state of the world at that time. Of course, some of the ideas about the past which people put forward are more sensible than others. It might be reasonable to ask whether the Battle of the Somme during the First World War was a tactical defeat, but a strategic victory. But when it is suggested that the moon landings were faked, then most of us think this is taking historical revisionism a bit far. Not that it should be forbidden to suggest such a thing, or to write or speak about it, you understand, but most people don't think such an inquiry to be worth considering or spending time looking at. Of course, none of us think it should be against the law to write that the moon landings were faked. That would be an awful state of affairs. It's just that most people won't take any notice of this idea and regard it as being a bit mad. It's much the same as regards the Holocaust, which saw the murder of around 6 million Jews. The evidence is exceedingly strong, and we have first-hand accounts from those who organised and carried out this genocide. For example, commandants of extermination camps like Franz Stangl of Treblinka and so on. Since the 1960s, some people have claimed that the Holocaust was either not as extensive as is claimed, or that Hitler didn't know about it, and various other crackpot ideas. I regard these theories as being as loony as those which claim that the Earth is flat. They run counter to all the available evidence. However, that doesn't mean that I want people to be prevented from expressing such views. In most countries in Europe, France, Austria, Germany, Greece, Poland, Portugal and so on, there are actually laws against denying the Holocaust. British historian David Irving was sent to prison in Austria for breaking such a law. Frankly, I find this bizarre, and I cannot see why one episode in history alone should be sacrosanct and people forbidden from debating it or expressing a view different from the prevailing orthodoxy. Truth doesn't need a bodyguard in this way. It so happens that the square root of 25 is 5, but we don't need to establish this fact by making it illegal to talk about some area of mathematics. If somebody wants to claim that the square root of 25 is really 109, then of course he or she should be free to make an idiot of himself in that way and expose himself to ridicule. So it is that David Irving is viewed as a crank in this country precisely because we can freely debate what he says and show how he is mistaken. In Austria and Germany, though, he's regarded as a dangerous man. And the reason for that is because nobody can really talk about his ideas or express agreement with them if they wish. This is a mistake. All that you do by locking people up for saying certain things about history is to make martyrs of them and cause some people to think that there might be something in what they are saying. I've had my own problems with this sort of thing because I had the Polish ambassador complaining to the BBC about me because of an interview I gave a few years ago on the World Service. I mentioned that there was a concentration camp in Poland run by Poles called Bratska Katuszka in the 1930s, which there was. However, in Poland it's illegal to talk of Polish concentration camps. The pretense must be maintained that they were all operated by the Germans. It's also, incidentally, not only against the law in Poland to deny the Holocaust, it is also illegal to question or deny Russian crimes carried out in the country, like the massacre of the officers at Katyn. All laws which prevent free discussion of history are a terrible idea. The various laws about Holocaust denial have been passed because it's anti-Semites who devise these crank theories about the history of the Holocaust, but that doesn't seem to me to be sufficient reason to stop any discussion at all on the subject.